Hey guys, welcome to today and to today's video. I'm really excited to be filming this video because I feel like I haven't sat down and chatted with you guys in a long time. Although slightly nervous about some of the questions you guys have because I feel like it's gonna get into some nitty-gritty, but it's okay. I'm prepared. I knew what I was getting myself into when I opened this up for you guys to give me some questions and topics and stuff. So today's video is about marriage. Specifically, I'll be just kind of reflecting on my own experience with marriage or long-term relationship because I can only really speak to my own experience. I have been married to my husband Caleb for 9 years. We are getting close to our 10-year anniversary, which is really crazy. And honestly, something I can't really wrap my head around. It feels like it went by so fast, but at the same time, it's been a long ride too, if that makes sense. So I'm just gonna hop into one that I saw several times and just get right into it. So a little pre-warning, if you are related to me in any way, or if you just don't want to hear about this kind of thing from me, just maybe don't watch this video. I'm talking to my in-laws, I'm talking to, you know, everybody who's related to me, just close out. So now that we got that out of the way, let's go to the first kind of topic. And this one I wanted to talk about right away because I think it's really important and something that I definitely experienced. And I know that so many of you guys in my community have possibly, potentially been down that road as well. The question is, how is your marriage now that you no longer battle with trying to conceive or infertility? How did you support your marriage during the hardest infertility years? Has infertility negatively impacted your sex life? And how did you two overcome that? So those are all kind of related towards like marriage in the infertility years. So we battled with infertility for 5 years before we welcomed our lovely daughter, and now our second daughter. But that chunk of time is like a huge part of our lives and a huge part of our marriage because we started trying for a baby pretty much right after we got married. So it really was like the bulk of everything that we experienced together while we were learning to be together, while we were learning to live together or learning to be married. We were also dealing with infertility as like an added layer. So it was a huge thing that took up a lot of our life and in turn affected our marriage for sure. So during those years, I think that we were lucky in the sense that the hardships that we went through really grew us together. And I know it's not the case for everyone. I know it can be a huge reason to grow apart. So I'm very grateful for that for us. That doesn't mean that we didn't have hard times or difficult moments in our marriage, but I just mean that like overall the pain that we experienced did make us come together. And so that's something I'm really grateful for. I think that the number one thing, and this is for just relationships in general, is communication. Like I could just say that until I'm blue in the face, but through those hard years, through all the IVF failures, through everything that was just so hard and weighing on us so much, we just always talked about it. We just always laid it out on the table. Nothing ever was kept inside. We always just said everything that we felt, everything that we needed to say, talked everything until there was nothing left to talk about. I knew everything he was thinking about, all of it. He knew everything I was thinking about it. Sometimes it would get annoying because we didn't want to talk about infertility anymore. It'd been 5 years, it was depressing, it was hard, but it was important to us that we were able to move forward with different, you know, plans, different fertility stuff, different things, and that we were really honest with each other about what we wanted, where our heads were at, and that kind of thing. So communication is number one. I know you've heard it before, but I cannot stress it enough. You have to just be open and honest. You just have to, because anytime you keep something inside, it's going to bottle up. And then the question about infertility negatively impacting intimacy. Yeah, it absolutely 100% did. During those years, especially like the trying to conceive years where you're timing things, you're like using OPKs, or you're trying to find your fertile window, like all of those things put just so much pressure on this thing that was supposed to be like a way for us to connect. It became a chore. It became almost dreaded in some ways from both of us, because it just wasn't the same anymore. And I think that that period of time where we were, you know, trying to conceive was detrimental for our ability to be intimate, and for our ability to enjoy that time. And then once we started moving towards like fertility treatments and IVF and stuff, it kind of took a little bit of a load off of the pressure in that way, because we knew, well, we're doing IVF, so it's not like we really expect anything to come from this. So it became a little bit more of like a fun thing rather than like we have to do this day and this day. Like it just became a little more spontaneous in that way. But it still had a lot of like baggage tied to it, just both of us mentally. Like it just always had that feeling, that baggage. And so I would say that it wasn't until we became parents, until Nova came into our lives, that the pressure lifted so much. Like it just felt like we're here, we're living this dream that we hoped for, and you know, we can start connecting again in this way without it feeling like every time we do, it just equals failure. Comparing your intimate life to those to others who don't struggle with infertility, it's easy to fall into this like, well, they just get to like connect in that way and like get pregnant and produce a baby. Like it just felt very like unfair, and it was hard to take yourself out of that. And so I think once we became parents, it just like was like, you know what, we're not doing this to try to get pregnant. It just took that weight off of what was supposed to always be fun. So in saying that, current day, it's not perfect. I think we'll always still have work to do in that area, because of all of that, like, I don't want to say the word trauma, but maybe that is an appropriate word, because of all that infertility trauma. But today we are so much better than we were last year, than we were the year before, than we were the year before, than we were 5 years ago. And although it feels awkward to talk about like my sex life, I know that there are so many people dealing with this, because I was absolutely dealing with it too. Has money ever been a point of contention or a struggle for you? Yeah, for sure. It still is. It always is a tricky thing, finances. During the infertility years, it was always like, it was often a point of contention when we would discuss, like, I was always, you know, wanting to do another treatment or wanting to do something, and it's hard because we never had the money to do any of these things, and so it's causes stress between us trying to figure out how to come up with the money, trying to figure out how to pay down this, or, you know, it was always a stressful thing. And then fast forward to now, there's the added factor of having kids and what that means for our finances, and it being expensive, and times right now are so expensive, like groceries are crazy. And so it really just is always like a thing. Do we fight about money? I don't really think so. I think that we can get stressed about money situations, and maybe that can come off in like our demeanor to each other, like on other things, if that makes sense. Like if you're stressed in any way, you might be more snappy, or like just little things might bother you a little bit more. But we don't usually fight over money, because I do think we have we're on the same page with our finances and stuff. Do we wish we made more money? Yeah, totally. And do we need to be better at budgeting? Yeah, totally. I know that finances can be such a huge thing for a lot of couples, and it makes total sense. Like it's a huge deal. It can be so stressful. A lot of questions about how do you make time as a couple with 2 young toddlers? How do you keep the romance alive now that you have kids? How to prioritize your spouse after 2 kids? How are you finding time together? Do you ever go on dates? Like la-di-da. So I really feel like the first year of becoming a 2-kid parent like I've said this before, but it rocked our worlds. We weren't sleeping. It was just a lot. There was a lot going on. It was just like learning to basically live your life not having any time for yourself was a bit of an adjustment. And so I would say like the first year of Mila's life was very like no time for each other, except for like you know, like an hour after the kids would go to bed, we'd like watch a show, but then Mila would always wake up and then one of us was here, one of us was there, and it was just, it was very scattered, our time like spent together or prioritizing each other, and it really was like non-existent, I would say. And so the last like few months, since she started sleeping better and we've gotten a bit more of a schedule and routine going, I feel like we've done a lot better even just in the last couple of months. We've been more comfortable like letting the girls be babysat and like going on a date night or two. We really haven't done that many, really only like 2 or 3 date nights. So I'm not talking to you from a lot of experience, but just being in a place where you're more comfortable like allowing that to like happen, like because before when she wasn't sleeping well, it just stressed me out to think of someone taking care of her and it not like going well, and things just, I would be stressed the whole time. So now I feel like we've been able to get into a better groove. Kids are going to bed at a better time, so we have a little bit more time in the evening sometimes to spend together. So it's really just about like going with the flow, I think, of the season that you're in, and to try not to guilt yourself for that. Like I remember in that first year of Mila's life just feeling like guilty, like feeling bad, like we're just in roommate mode a little bit, you know, we're just kind of like both tackling this parenting thing and there's not much room for each other, and we're just kind of like doing our tasks, you know, doing them together often, but like we're just kind of in this mode. And I felt guilty for that, like wow, like not being the best wife right now, and like, or vice versa, and just feeling like we weren't giving each other what we needed. But now that I feel like we're getting into a better groove, I'm realizing that like it just is the season, like it just is the way it is, and you can't feel bad for that. And if your partner's making you feel bad for that, you need to call them out. You need to just say, listen bud. But all jokes aside, I just mean that nothing ever lasts forever. If you're in a season of life where you're really, really busy and it's really hard to connect, have an open conversation about it and try to make a plan, of course, but don't guilt yourself for that, because it's just the way life goes. We have, you know, ups and downs, we have seasons, and I feel so much better now. And I think back on that year and I'm like, you know what, we were just in survival mode. Like, that's fine, you know? And now I feel like we can try to put a little bit more energy and effort into us, and it does feel so good. So that leads us into like, how do we focus on each other, or how are we doing that? Like I said, trying to have little date nights, or even not nights, but like during the day, like you could just drop off your kids at your in-laws or something for an hour and go run an errand together, or whatever it is, like take nap time, quiet time on the weekend, and like do something together, or just sit and relax. But then there's also like having intention. So like throughout the day, even when the kids are around, like have a good long hug standing in the kitchen, you know, just like stop what you're doing, just give each other a big long hug. You know, the kids can be crazy, it can be loud, but just like having that connection throughout the day, just here and there, like whenever you can, is huge, I think. Sometimes if you just start getting into like the groove of like being a little more handsy or a little more like affectionate towards each other, it just like naturally comes up in both of you, I find, at least in my situation. It's like the more we are lovey to each other, the more we want to be lovey to each other, because it just starts to like kick it into your mind, like, oh yeah, like I actually really enjoy this, like let's continue. Whereas you can often just get into this like I said, this like roommate mode where you're not really thinking about it, and because you're not thinking about it, you don't think to do it, and then it just all of a sudden 6 months pass and you're like, oh okay, we haven't been that lovey-dovey lately. But if you have that intention and you just try to start getting the ball rolling, I find for us it sparks that a little bit more, and then we are more frequent or intentional with it. This is a really good one. It says dealing with default parent blame. So if you don't know what a default parent is, it is essentially the parent that is most often with the kids, most often the one that the kids come to when they need something, when they need a snack, when they need, you know, A, B, C, D, through the whole alphabet. Let me find the definition for you so I can be more accurate. Default parent is the parent who does the lion's share of the day-to-day work of parenting, makes breakfast, gets lunches ready, does most of school pickups and carpooling, helps with homework, and knows the kids' schedules without having to check a calendar. basically the one who carries the bigger load when it comes to the kids. Usually if one parent stays home with the kids, it's usually that parent who's the default parent. In our case, I am absolutely the default parent, and that this isn't to be seen as like negative, like, oh, that means Caleb's not doing his share of parenting. That's not what that means. Necessarily. So maybe you mean like when you're the default parent feeling like everything is on you all the time, or that your mental load is all encompassing and you want your partner to share some of that, or you feel maybe overwhelmed and you don't want to be the only one taking that on. Or maybe the other parent who's not the default parent, maybe they just are not stepping up to the plate that you need them to be. These are all assumptions based on what I know about default parents, but I know I've said this already, but communicate. If, say, I'm feeling like, you know, I'm overwhelmed, my brain is fried from thinking about meal planning, groceries, dinner, getting the kids like the next size up in winter gear, like that's been on my mind 24/7. Packing preschool lunches, you know, getting everything squared away for being babysat or for birthday parties, buying the birthday gifts for a birthday party. Like there are so many things that go through the mind of a mother, or the mind of a default parent, or parent in general. I sometimes find myself so overwhelmed that I just have to delegate tasks away from myself so that I don't like explode. I'll have to like tell Caleb like straight on, because he doesn't read my mind and he doesn't know, you know, that I have this. I mean, he knows I have this list going because we talk about this often, but he doesn't know exactly what is on the list in my mind, if that makes sense. So I have to say to him, like right now I'm thinking about how it just snowed and I don't have boots for either girls, winter boots that fit either girls, and that's worrying me, and we need to get on that. And I have to tell him like, I need your help on that. Sometimes these things can just like get crazy in your head and stress you out. But if you have a willing partner who's willing and ready to help you, like it's important to like give them the opportunity to, if that makes sense. And those of you that are not the default parent, recognize that in yourself and recognize your partner for being the default parent, and recognize all that they have to do, because it's a lot. It doesn't look like a lot sometimes because it's all going on behind the scenes. It's all going on, you know, in their head or on their lists or in their planner. Like all of these things are just a million tabs open in the brain. But recognizing, I really appreciate that you're working so hard to make sure our kids are fed and dinner and blah 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 blah. It just goes like such a long way. What do you fight about? How often, and how do you resolve it? We aren't huge fighters, I don't think. I wouldn't say. We can get in like arguments or like be snappy with each other from time to time, I would say, but like fights, like to qualify something as a fight, hasn't happened super frequently in our marriage. One of our like arguments can sometimes be surrounding around video games, and recently we've done better. I think that I always had a hard time with it because I just didn't understand it. I'm like, why do you want to play video games so late into the night? Like, I don't get it. Or like, I wish you would hang out with me, not want to like play video games. And so that would sometimes be a point of frustration for us, and him wanting to, you know, play way more than I want him to play and that kind of thing. So that was something that we argued about often throughout our last 9 years. I do think recently in the last like 6 to 12 months or something, I think I just came to the realization that like sometimes I want to go on a mom date with one of my girlfriends and decompress and, you know, go to lunch or something, or I want to read my book, or I want to watch a show, or whatever it is, and realizing that like that's something that I want to do to decompress after a hard day with the kids or whatever, and that this is just something that he wants to do to decompress. We have like a whole, you know, we have this ongoing discussion about like what we're both comfortable with, and we've come to like a good agreement lately. and he like plays online and talks to his like good friend. And so I kind of just am seeing it now as like that's his hangout time with his friend. When I leave the kids with him and go on a mom date, that's my hangout time with my friend. So that's been the way that we've both been able to frame it better and not argue about it as much anymore. But I think the rest of like arguments between us is just when we're like a little bit stressed about something, like I talked about finances, or like maybe we're stressed about something with the kids, or maybe I deal with sensory overload a lot. So like when it's noisy and the kids are noisy, or there's a lot of whining or a lot of, you know, those negative noises happening, like, or the dog's barking, like I get overwhelmed and my anxiety peaks and I can get snappy in those moments. And sometimes sometimes no one in the house is safe for me. I'm just kidding. Usually I try to leave and calm down, but you know, sometimes I do snap a little. And so often, because I'm trying not to snap at the kids, I might snap at my husband. So yes, and then vice versa, like if he's stressed about something, then he can snap at me. I think it's just like stress of other things that are like bigger things can cause the little things to feel like a big deal in the moment, even though when you're in like a good happy state, like those little things don't necessarily matter. But because you're feeling the stress or the weight of whatever issue, you can snap at like little things. Like the classic one for us is like he comes home from work and he wants to immediately go out and mow the lawn, and I'm like, dude, I've been with these children for so many hours. Can you please just like be with us for like a few seconds? Or can we make a plan so that I don't feel like I'm continuing my solo parenting day for like another 2 hours? Like, you know, you just want to that's a whole other topic, a whole other video probably, but those kinds of things are probably what we argue about too. But okay, and then last one, because I think I've been talking for a while, was it hard to adjust after having kids? I think coming from like this infertility bubble that we were in, having Nova was like amazing for our marriage. It was great because we felt like we had this purpose and we were falling in love with each other as, you know, he was falling in love with me as a mom, I was falling in love with him as a dad. Seeing each other fulfill this dream and knowing like how hard we worked for it was like massive for us. I think it sparked our marriage for sure, and we felt really just like, we felt like this family unit and like just really happy and blissful. And then when Mila came along, it's the same thing. Like you're in this bubble of like, wow, like this is what we're doing, like this is amazing. And then as time goes on, you're like, wow, I'm stressed, wow, I'm tired, wow, I'm exhausted, this is hard, harder than maybe I initially realized. And all of these things kind of, you know, break the bubble a little bit. But overall, I think we've adjusted as much as anyone can when you have kids. It's crazy, it's a whirlwind, it's a lot of work, but being this like family together is truly where we've always felt we were meant to be. So seeing it come to life and being in this stage is amazing. Do I see it that way every second of every day? And maybe not. Like sometimes I feel like, oh my gosh, my life is crazy. But the big picture is that we are just like really quite happy to be a family and to be in this stage of our lives. So I need to remind myself that more on the day-to-day when I'm like feeling overwhelmed. I will try to do that. I'll try my best. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I hope you got something out of it. I'm not a professional. I don't necessarily know what I'm talking about in any way, but I'm just speaking from my heart and from what I've experienced. So if you can relate to anything that I said, definitely leave it in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next video.